Welcome to the Forge Truth Podcast, where we are building great men as God defines greatness. Forge is a movement of men with a mission to help all men realize they are the deeply beloved, redeemed sons of the Most High God. I'm your producer, Zach, and I'm here to discuss the issues that affect men the most with our two hosts, Dr. Pete Alwinson, lifelong pastor and leader of Forge, and Jayson Quiñones, Bishop of Core Faith Church in Oviedo, Florida. Men, welcome to the show.
Hey, here we are. Let's go.
Yes, we are here. It's a little chilly in Florida.
It is. What's the temperature outside now?
I don't know. It's like 40 degrees or something like that. It might be a little warmer.
40 degrees.
Yeah.
I know. That
Yeah.
is like forever here in Florida. Forever cold.
Do you guys like it, or you want it to go away as fast as possible?
I'm glad. I like it.
Yeah, I determined after these last few summers that have been extremely brutal, I will never complain about cold weather again. So I'm just gonna embrace the cold. But yeah, it's pretty intense, man.
Amen.
I think Sunday we're gonna see how spiritual people are. The low is 22, the high is 45.
Yeah.
So
See if they show up for church.
yeah,
A low of 22.
Low
any
of
chance
22.
Any chance of snow?
It's within the realm, right?
With that, in the years I've been here in Florida, we have not had snow, I don't think. Couple of flakes once,
Yeah,
I think. That's
yeah.
it.
All right.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, we're not going to get close to negative temperatures, but today we're going to talk about the negative world, because we're talking about a book by Renn called Life in the Negative World. This is a book that all three of us just read. Pete, you introduced us to this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it means by the negative world?
Yeah. You know, and guys, today in this podcast, we are appealing to the leader in you. We just got to say that from the get-go. Mm-hmm. We talk about identity, purpose, character, confidence, and legacy as men. But today, part of our purpose is that we're leaders, and we're going to appeal to the leader in you, leader of your family, leaders in your church. And this really gripped me because I think Renn helps us understand the world that we live in right now as evangelicals. And real quick, let me just lay out what he says about the three worlds of evangelicalism. And keep in mind that we're talking about Bible-believing Christians here. These are people who take the Bible. We believe, at Forge, we believe the Bible's the inspired, inerrant, authoritative word of God. So from Genesis to Revelation.
Yeah, specifically, he's talking about evangelicals.
He's talking about evangelical. He's not talking per se about Catholic believers or Episcopalians per se. He's pretty much talking about Protestant evangelicals. Yeah. So now this will have application to everybody on that. But if you're a Bible-believing evangelical Christian, and that term is changing, this will appeal to you. And particularly to pastors, because we have to lead congregations. So we're really doing evangelism. We need to know the world in which we live so we can apply the gospel in the real world around us. So basically, he says that as you analyze American culture historically, and because I'm the old guy on the table, I remember most of this, that the first period of evangelicalism he talks about is church in the positive world. And he talks about how the 1950s, probably 1955, the year, interestingly, I was born, had the highest attendance of people going to church in America. Catch this, guys. 50% of Americans went to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
In 1955, 50%. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody was born again or really following Jesus, but they went to church.
Right. And that's his point in the positive world, is that people wanted to go to church. It was, you had some social clout because you were a churchgoer.
That's right.
If you didn't go to church, there was something wrong. Like, yeah, that person's shady, or whatever the case is. So
Can you trust that guy?
Right.
He doesn't even go to church.
Being Christian was viewed as a positive attribute.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
And so that's why he says evangelical was a church in the positive world. Yeah. And so people went there. Now, there were two real basic strains that happened in that time period. One were what we called, affectionately, the fighting fundamentalists. They believed the basics of the Gospels, but they were hard-edged about it, fighting fundies. And then there were the evangelicals who were a little softer edged. Christianity Today came out. Billy Graham was at the forefront of that evangelistic movement, as were other people. So they tried to be less hard, but still they were fundamental in their doctrine. There was another group that came out of that time in the church positive world, and later on in the late 60s, 70s, mostly in the 70s and 80s, called the what? Do you remember?
The seeker-sensitive movement.
Seeker-sensitive movement.
Yep.
And basically, guys like Bill Hybels and other guys, they did a survey in their neighborhood because church attendance began to drop off in the 60s and 70s. It began to slide downhill. But most people, well, it was still church positive world. They felt guilty for not going to church. So they went and did a business model church. They went door to door, said, hey, what kind of church would you go to?
Right.
And then churches like Willow Creek Community and others planted churches that appealed to those people who felt guilty about it. So that was a whole movement. And probably it carried on until about 1994 or so. These dates are sort of, you can give on them. But we began to see a movement of change in American culture where we moved into what Aaron Renn calls the church neutral world, where, okay, the church in America was okay, we're going to have a guy, a talk show host might say, we're going to have a pastor, a priest, and a Buddhist, and we're going to talk.
Right.
And it was kind of like, if you're a Bible-believing evangelical, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not great.
Right.
It's sort of a neutral thing.
Right.
But then he says somewhere around 2012, 2014, our culture really took another turn. The church was continuing to lose people. And we went into what he calls the church negative world, where now Christianity is seen as a negative thing, not positive, not even neutral. And we began to see how culture had changed and influenced us so much so that I began to see it really in 2020. And I began to see the evangelical churches divided over issues like Black Lives Matter, over should you follow government when they're saying get the vaccine, and things like that. And we began to see great divisions in the evangelical churches.
Right.
And then how others responded toward us was much more negative. We began to be canceled as Christians.
Right.
It was Christians who were the problem. And so he writes this book to help us understand those phases. And why this really hits me is that I've lived through all of them.
Right.
And I have seen, yes, that helps explain this world. And then he comes up with suggestions on how the church ought to be the church in the negative world. Yeah. And that's what it's about. And that's why it was so helpful for me. And what we want to lay out here are some of the applications for us as men.
Yeah, I think when you're reading this, I haven't been a Christian as long as you.
You haven't been alive as long as me.
I haven't been alive as long as you either. This is true. And as Zach reminds us every week, you've been a pastor all your life, so since the womb. But nonetheless, I got saved in 1993. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would have been coming in on 1994. So I would have been coming in on the neutral world. Yeah. Right. Going into the negative world. Yeah. And so I think that the big thing, off camera, we were talking about Tim Keller and how he came in and just, being winsome and being engaging. And, there was a reporter that became part of his church. We talked about the Bill Hybels and, Saddleback, and Rick Joyner, Purpose Driven Church, those types of things. That was what was really big when I started. Yeah. And right. So, people, we were the church was still offering this life, this purpose. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think now the transition that we're seeing is now instead of offering life, we're being painted as though we are taking life from people, because if we don't affirm what someone believes, if we're not okay with their lifestyle or their life choices, if we're not, if we're not okay with their gender ideologies and things like that, well, we're definitely the enemy. That's right. And I think for us guys, we probably feel that and see that. But I think that this really helps us not just understand that, but I do think that he gives us a good framework to think about how do we engage our world in an evangelistic way, and how do we reclaim what I believe is supposed to be biblical Christianity. And it's that we shouldn't, in my view, and you can, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my view is we should always seek to be relevant, but we have to be sure that we're not compromising in any way, shape, or form when it comes to the presentation of the truth that God has given us. And the reason why we brought up the reporter is because she was at Tim's church, and she was there, and then he passed away, and then she comes out and says she's leaving because she finds out after all these years being a member that they're actually against all of these things that she's okay with.
That's right.
Right? And so how clear was the message being conveyed?
Right.
Right. And trying to be ecumenical and trying to be accommodating, right? If that makes sense.
Engaging with culture, we can engage and find a third way to relate.
Right.
And so, that can be problematic, particularly in a world now that sees us as the problem.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's different strategies and challenges when you live in a world or a culture that is for you or against you, right? So like if you're sailing, it matters where the wind is blowing, right? If it's behind your sails, you're going to have a different experience and a different strategy of how to get from A to B than if it's against your sails.
Right.
But here's the thing, a sailboat can go forward no matter how the wind is blowing, right? A sailboat can move forward even if the wind is blowing directly against it.
Right.
You just have to use a different strategy with how you position your sails.
Yes.
And so that's true with the church as well. Whether culture is with us or against us, we need to be strategic and smart about how we engage.
That's right. That's right. And what now? I got a question for you. When the church got started, what kind of world were they in? Were they in a positive world, neutral, or negative world?
I would say definitely negative. They were seen as an imposter religion.
Yep.
Because they were against the Jewish people of their day. The Apostle Paul, Saul, he is like 100% against them because they're introducing this other God, this other worship. You have the Roman Empire that's there, and they are Caesar is Lord, and now we're talking about, nope, Jesus is Lord. So the church absolutely was born and flourished and did its best in the midst of a negative world.
That's right.
So I would say this. I think that whether we realize it or not, God is actually positioning us for probably the greatest move that we have seen of the kingdom up until the days that we've lived in.
Amen. And particularly in America, I believe that because I believe that we have put together somewhat of a civil religion in America, and that actually Christians have always done better and been more faithful to the gospel when they've experienced persecution and suffering.
Right.
So read the book of Acts and you see how, just what you said,
Yeah.
they thrived under persecution. I mean, Acts 4, Acts 5, we must serve God rather than men.
Yeah.
And so what Aaron Renn has done is in a very real way helped us see how we understand with this Christian base that we have in a culture, how the church really needs to be the church. And you know what? We have the New Testament that was written in the negative world.
Yeah.
It understands us and the world we're living in right now.
Yeah.
So
I think, and I would go ahead. I'm sorry, Zach.
No, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I just want to encourage guys. I think that this book, it's not a really difficult read. It's very practical. What I loved is that he came at it and he was like, some of these things we should have already been doing, and I'm not telling you anything new. I love that, right. and just it reinforces, things that we should automatically be doing as Christians as we're engaging. So, but go ahead, Zach, you had something.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I really liked about what the book did is provide kind of practical ideas of like, what is a strategy the church should be using in our times.
Right. Yeah. So what were some of those things?
Well, one that stood out to me was the pursuing ownership. So it's the idea that you can't trust institutions outside the church to support what the church is trying to do. And so instead, the church should seek to have its own institutions. So like having Christian schools and having all of these like specific institutions that the church doesn't have to rely on culture to like allow them to do what they need to do.
Right.
So I found that really interesting.
That is a fascinating perspective, that even though we have public schools, but public schools have been established by government to train the kind of citizens government wants.
Right.
And at first that was okay. Maybe in the 1930s and 1940s, that was okay. But we see even in the 1920s, shifts away from biblical Christianity taking place. And so that what churches should do, is provide alternatives, cultural alternatives, not to withdraw from culture, because I say we still need Christians teaching in public schools.
Yeah.
But at this point, if my kids were young, I don't think I could put my kids in public schools right now.
Yeah.
They're too propagandizing for secular ends.
Right. Right. Yeah. The morals of the culture have shifted in such a big way. So it's hard. But I think the idea of that pursuit of ownership it's so that way you don't have to compromise your convictions in order to move forward in your life. You can be a faithful Christian. You have a lot of people that are in, larger organizations that they are losing their jobs, they're losing positions because they have to bow to whatever the culture is saying, whatever, they're communicating. You talk about, we live in a diverse world.
Yeah,
right.
We do.
And we have to understand that. However, you move beyond, being diverse and understanding each other's cultures when you start imposing, well, you have to bow to this ideology or you're not being inclusive. If someone was born a she and he wants to be called, or she wants to be called a he, and if you don't respect that, you could lose your job for that. Well, if you're an owner, you're not worried about that.
That's right.
And so it's becoming resilient, which is, I think that's a man word.
Resilience,
and so, yeah.
It is. And those are those living personally. He talks about becoming obedient to Christ.
Yep.
Becoming excellent and becoming resilient.
Yeah.
And that resilience is the word for my kids this year. I told them they're going to have one word that we're going to focus on this year, and it's resilience.
I like that.
Zach, that's a great idea. I never did that. Have one word for a year that you're training your kids.
That's our focus on.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love this idea. There was a book that was written not too long ago, a few years ago now, called Do Hard Things. And teach your kids to do hard things.
Yeah.
Teach them to be resilient.
That's our family motto is Swedes do hard things.
Wow. I love that. That's good.
And once I told I tell my kids this all the time, and I overheard my son walking up the stairs muttering to himself, we do hard things. We do hard things.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that's parenting.
Yeah.
That's train up your child in the way he should go.
Yeah.
That's good. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. What other practical applications are there to living in the negative world?
Well, I mean, again, I'm just looking at the table of contents right now, right? So just looking at the way that he broke it down, I think that this is, great. Part one, right? Living personally, how we live, leading institutionally, engaging missionally. So I think those, three areas there, they kind of help us to see, okay, this is how we do this. And so there's that personal component, the institutional side of this, I think is imperative. I love the pursue institutional integrity. That's a big deal in the church world today, right? Because if we as the church want to redeem our name, then we need to make sure that we're walking in integrity.
That's right.
Financially, with sexually, with the way that we treat people, as far as how we engage, all of these different areas, power, money, sex, right? We want to make sure that we're walking integrity in these areas, that we're not being lording leaders, that we're walking with integrity in these areas. So I think that was an extremely important one, for the church.
Oh, absolutely. So if the church is going to be the church, all of those ways. We can't be a corrupt church. We need to be a pure church. And we see the explosion of sexual issues within the church and how church leaders have to call it out. If they have one of their staff members, one of their people that is doing anything that is wrong, deal with it right away. Do not cover it up. Deal with it, call it out, take care of it.
It's kind of unconscionable when church leaders are calling out the like sexual sin of other people, and then so many leaders are being caught in affairs and stuff like that.
That's right. And so many church leaders are. If you're a church leader, you're a pastor, you're an elder, you're a deacon, you're a leader in the church. We need men who are above reproach. A church has to continue to pursue purity, and we mess up and we confess it.
Right.
And Jesus paid for it.
Right.
But that grace that we've received urges us on.
And it never gives us a license.
That's right.
I think we have to understand that. And I would just say one other thing, because I think sexual purity is important, but I also think the other side is heavy-handed leadership is also something that goes unchecked, because you're a leader, you're a driver, disc profile, high D. Well, you talk to people, you're a melancholy choleric, that's me, I'm just talking about myself, very direct. You don't know how to soften the edges, and you've got to come before the Lord and be able to say, wait a second, I can't be heavy-handed. I can't be that driver, without, operating with the character, the fruit of the Spirit, right? Gentleness is part of the fruit of the Spirit, whether we like it or not, right? So anyway, I think that's another area where there has to be that institutional integrity, is obviously in the area of sexuality, but also recognizing that we can't be heavy-handed leaders. That doesn't mean we need to be pushovers, but we need to make sure that we're leading the way that Christ would lead.
That's right.
Yeah.
A lot of guys may be frustrated with their own church at this point. And they're saying they're seeing these changes, but they don't have the words for what's going on in their church.
Yeah.
And that's why I really encourage you to read this book, those of you who are interested, because this may give a framework that your pastor doesn't even understand. And why you're frustrated with your church. Your pastor could be operating under a positive world view. Right. That we live in a world where, people know they're guilty and they should be in church and they need Jesus. Right. No, they don't. Right. We're in a post-Christian culture. Yeah. We're not even in a neutral world anymore. Yeah. Most of our country is against Christianity, even though there's still a lot of believers. Right. So this helps us see that we get our identity not from what culture sees, but from what God sees of us in Christ. Yeah. And why I like those pastors speaking about institutional integrity. What I find is that the pastors I really connect with are those that are basically saying, hey, listen, we're building on the shoulders of the pastors of yesterday. Yeah. There's some good guys out there, but we're living a different time. And so we're still going to do social programs. We're still going to invite everybody into our church that wants to be here, but we're going to be warmly clear of who we are from the get-go. Yeah. We're not going to soft pedal anything. Yeah. We're going to be full of grace and truth. Yeah. And I think that is a better model for church. Yeah. Then that's what the early church was, and that's what I think we're going to have to be today. Yeah, yeah. I love one of the things that stood out to me as well was when he spoke about the being prudentially engaged, and he talked about the need for pre-evangelism. We're used to, hey, if you died and you stand before God, why should He let you into heaven? What do you mean? Like, why are we even talking about that? Like, that doesn't even make sense to a lot of people. Where are we at? Eternity, stuff like that. There's so many people in the United States that don't have even a framework. They've never read a Bible. They've never heard about Jesus. And so thinking about that, I think, and you've shared on this, when you're, ask good questions, find out where people are, and build from that place when it comes to sharing the gospel. And I always share with our church, if you don't know the bad news, the good news doesn't make any sense. But even in that, it's like, what do you mean I'm a sinner? What do you mean I was born into sin? Like, so positive world. That was positive world where people understood there's a God by and large. Right. And that He was a loving God. but he loves me.
Yeah.
That's positive world stuff.
Yeah.
And we have more practical atheists today than ever in America.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question for you guys. Would you, if you could decide this, would you rather we quickly switch back to the positive world, or do you want to see the church go in the negative world for a decade or so?
Ooh, that's a Zach question.
What would you rather?
Isn't it? Huh? That's a good question.
Man, I think I have to be honest. I think the negative world will make the church look like what it should.
Mm.
I think my carnal side would say, man, let's just go back to positive world. Everybody's going to be on board. Everybody will find the value of being in church. It's so much easier to get people in, even if they're not fully committed. But they'll come and they'll fill the room. But I think the negative world is going to push the church to its knees. It's going to push the church, to a dependence and a reliance on God that I think is so necessary to see. To see. We pray for revival all the time and praying for God to move. And I think you have to have that desperation. And I think the negative world it'll either push the church into irrelevance, which by ourselves, that's where we will end up. But we know 2,000 years later, after the resurrection, the church is still around because we're not the builders of the church. Jesus is. Mm-hmm. So I think let's stick to where we are. I think that's going to take us to where God wants us.
I am with you 100%, 100%. That we only can live in the world that is, and the gospel was raised in the negative. It came into the negative world, and it triumphed. And part of the reason why I think the gospel has lost its power in America is that in the early 1900s we went into the social gospel. In other words, the gospel was reinvented into, hey, sin is when people don't have enough money, or sin is when there's racial disharmony. Now that those can be sinful applications of that, but the reality is sin is breaking the law of God and standing before a holy God. Right. And so I think what we get the opportunity to do is go back to what the gospel really is. Yeah. All right, Zach, that's ours. What's your? How do you answer that?
You guys know this phrase, but I think it's really true that hard times make strong men make good times make weak men, and weak men make hard times.
Totally.
And so if this is the period that the church is in, like, let's use it to clean house, like tidy up, like what we're doing, and then really make a great impact on the world.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Let's talk real quick before we wrap this up. What are the 4 basic conclusions he comes to?
Yeah. So in this conclusion, there's 4 things that I think this is for us men who are leaders. It's the pursuit of excellence. Mm-hmm. I think that we can help our churches pursue excellence. How can you serve? How can you support? How can you engage as men? Resilience and anti-fragility. Like, men, we're supposed to be strong. And so that's on us. Acquiring ownership, like Zach pointed out, being leaders in that place, in that space.
Even being an entrepreneur.
Right.
I mean, if a guy could start a business, or with a Christian start a business where he gets independent of corporate America that could have immoral values.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in one of the examples, they had a building that was shared, by a business and a church, and being able to do things like that. I mean, I think those are ways that we can actually, support and have that. And then speaking the truth clearly. Knowing what the truth is and engaging and not being afraid. Our theme for the year is a bold truth for Forge. And so I'd say, let's get it.
That's right. Those are good conclusions and really practical for us. Yeah. Pursuing excellence, resilience, anti-fragility, Zach's word, resilience for his family, anti-fragility, acquiring ownership, speaking truth clearly.
All right. Well, the book is called Life in the Negative World. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Forge Truth Podcast. If you have any questions or comments about what we talked about today, you can email the show at forgetruth.com. You can also check out our website at forgetruth.com if you want to learn more about the Forge movement. Jayson, why don't you share a challenge for our men today?
Well, guys, I will share a challenge from the book of Esther, and it is that you have been brought to the kingdom for such a time as this. And we are living in the days. God is not shocked by what we see going on around us. And he has chosen us. He has chosen you to make a great impact for his glory in the world. And so I say, get after it, man. Get on your knees before the Lord. Cry out to him for him to move and ask him to use you in mighty ways. And he'll do it.